Hi, I'm Tommy.
And I'm Ads, and this week on Red Whine, we're talking about Stranger Things 2 on Netflix.
2, not Series 2.
Not Series 2.
Not Season 2.
It's just 2.
Yeah.
It's a straight up 2.
And it's quite interesting because I went to see a live interview with the Duffer Brothers about a year ago. So after the first series, but before this one, obviously. And there was a lot of talk at the time about whether there should be a straight up second series or whether this was going to be an anthology show and just do some more Stranger Things.
Well, I think what you're about to say kind of plays into my entire thoughts about Stranger Things 2.
And what they said was they wanted to do a sequel. They saw this as Stranger Things 2, not a Stranger Things Series 2. They said, imagine this was a film or a book. Yeah. This is literally a sequel, not a continuation of a story. This is the second one where, you know, we turn everything up, basically. And so I knew that going in, that's what they wanted to do.
I also knew that because I remember reading things at the time saying, yeah, we'll see these characters again. And I remember thinking then, what I think now, having watched 9 hours of 2, is that was a mistake, I think. I'm torn about this because on the one hand, you know, it's still good, and I'm glad that there is TV like this, and it still shits on a lot of TV that is out there. But at the same time, like with it, like laying a kind of critical eye on it, I definitely thought when the first one ended that it should just be an anthology show. Go somewhere else. The title lends itself so well to that. Like Stranger Things are happening over here now, like different cast of characters, different setting, and just do an anthology like American Horror Story. And it hasn't, and it has fallen into that like sequel pit of like bigger, badder, but to its like detriment in my eyes.
Yeah, so I disagree a bit. I definitely wanted them to go the anthology route, which is a gamble because sometimes that can be, an American Horror Story, which did it really successfully, at least for a while, or that can be a True Detective, which essentially kills what people love this one great series, and then it just comes and just doesn't do it as successfully. But I guess that's just a creative gamble. That's what I wanted. But actually, after seeing this, I just really enjoyed it, and I thought it was very much Aliens to the first one's Alien, and I think knowingly, I think there are references to that specifically, and you know, running around with the big machine gun with all the Demogorgons kind of running down the corridors.
It was almost like Alien 3 more than it was Aliens.
Well, they even have that bit where it's essentially like the Marines with the head cams, you know, where they're watching them on the monitors.
With the dots coming.
Which was
no,
very
they're all
much,
around you. Yeah.
And I think they were doing that on purpose. That was definitely we're doing a sequel and we're going to do the most famous sequel. And I think it was quite successful. I mean, I watched the whole thing in one day, and I didn't have to, and that must be because I liked it. I don't know whether I liked it as much as the first one, because the first one was just a surprise. On the other hand, even though I did really like this series, I now do want it to end. It ended so much, even more definitively than the first one. It wraps up quite nicely, and I could just do with it either going to a different story or just ending. And let's just watch something new on Netflix.
Well, this is the problem that they've created for themselves by not doing an anthology series, because if now they have to go somewhere else, it's like thematically really weird.
You can't do pairs of anthologies.
And the problem is, you know, Netflix will be sitting there going, well, everyone loves this, make more of this. And I kind of wonder, like behind closed doors, how much that was a deciding factor in continuing the story anyway, in that, like, you know, a lot of the love that people have for it was about how great the core like kid actors are, because they are, and maybe there was some conversations of like, we need more of them, do that again, rather than for creative reasons. Maybe that's maybe massively cynical, but
I think the interview I saw with the Duffer Brothers laid to rest that. It seemed like this is really what they wanted to do, and from my understanding is that the first series was so successful, Netflix would have allowed them, if they wanted to do an anthology, Netflix would have let them do it. They were at a point where they were given real kind of creative freedom. They even stressed, even in that first series, I think Netflix is a bit of an experiment still in terms of, you know, giving interesting ideas.
Yeah, I mean, they would never have gotten this gig like 5 years ago.
No.
because they were a bunch of kind of newbies. They had like one film project that was basically stalled at some studio, and then they went on and made a script for this, and then some Netflix went, here's like $1 billion, off you go.
Yeah.
I read a thing saying that they'd actually were inspired by Prisoners, the Denis Villeneuve movie, in saying that, wouldn't it be cool if it was that kind of plot, but with like a sci-fi edge to it at the same time, and that they kind of started dreaming up this idea in like 2013, and then the first series came out in 2016. So only last year, and I just feel like if you're dreaming up a dream like passion project for 3 years, that's a lot different to then can you crank out another one in probably 9 months?
Yeah, well, it's second album syndrome, isn't it? Where your first album is the songs that you've been writing for 10 years and perfecting, in tiny pubs with only 4 people watching, and then suddenly you've got to crank out a second album in 12 months.
Yeah, and now on a schedule where it's going to be impossible to maintain unless maybe they go, right, we are the Duffer Brothers, we oversee Stranger Things, but here's a bunch of like screenwriters and stuff who do other things.
Despite the fact that they did have that second album problem, I think they managed to navigate those waters quite well. And the reason being, I actually find that villain more compelling than there is just a monster that's in another dimension. I'm a sucker for Lovecraft and all that stuff. The idea that the big bad was inside Will rather than Will being lost in the upside down, I actually found slightly more compelling than the first one. I actually found the missing persons plot of the first one actually got quite tired by kind of episode 7 or 8. We all knew where he was, the kids knew where he was, and there was lots of that thing that happens in a lot of those kind of 80s films as well, of just adults not really believing the kids. Yeah. And we know, and that frustration works for 20 minutes in a film, but it was whole episodes of...
I think you could get away with that because that was basically the premise of the thing, wasn't it? It's like if series 1 was, kids knowing that adults are just in the dark. So as a overall, like, it's a pastiche or like a homage to that kind of stuff. That works for a whole series for me. This one, I think the problem with the Lovecraftian stuff is if the Lovecraftian stuff is like sort of a hopelessness about it because you there's a massive monster over there. What is it? I have absolutely no idea. How are we going to kill it? Can't. Like. Whereas this, because you then present a big monstery thing, you don't have to explain it, but then they felt the need to have to try and like vanquish it, and then it's vanquished by sort of wishy-washy methods.
But it isn't vanquished, they just closed the portal.
Yeah, but that's the same thing almost.
Yeah, and the one negative that it has is one of the big negatives of Alien is that you've got this thing that was kind of seemed infinitely scary and powerful in the first series, essentially can just be shot in the face in the second series, so they're just mowing down.
Well, I think those things, even in the first series, I think it's classic, don't show the monster because it's scary not to see it. But the second you started having full-on shots in the first season of this monster thing, and the same goes for this one where they were more like dog-like, is you just can't go... You're really slow to attack people. Like, you've got someone, you're really slow to actually just bite their face off. Like, and it becomes less threatening the more jeopardy people go through because the more narrow escapes they get into. But in this, like, I'm just going to open my face
very slowly. Yeah. Well, it's like the monster equivalent of the James Bond villain explaining everything, isn't it? They just very slowly bite you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess Stranger Things gets away with a lot because any negative you have like that can always just be chalked up to, that's just, how the bad things in the 80s did it.
Yeah. I mean,
which is cheating.
So, like, cards on the table for me, right? I don't want to be like a big Stranger Things contrarian, or I'm not, that's not what I'm trying to be, because I know it's like, everyone likes it, and that makes me sound like a contrarian from saying I necessarily don't. I did like the first season as a self-contained thing, and this is, again, goes back to that, it should be an anthology. I was massively lukewarm about this season. I was like, okay, for that whole thing, I was just kind of watching it to tick the box of having watched it, because it's now a cultural thing. And it being a cultural thing was something that almost like struck me whilst I was watching it. So a big for instance of that, right, is in the first season there's the bit where we know the Ryder's character, Joyce, she has the Christmas lights up on the wall with the alphabet, and now that has become like an iconic bit of imagery. And people do like events, and you can buy that thing as like wallpaper, or you can buy like kits to do it. In this season, the kind of equivalent of that was Will drawing maps of the like underground, the upside down, and then they went all around the house and they were snaking bits of paper, and that just felt to me like we're trying to do a new version of that iconic thing that you might better recreate at home, or like that looks like a cool thing.
Yeah.
And it kind of just didn't fly for me in the same way because it was a retread.
Yeah, and this is one of those things that really are underpinned by them saying we're making a sequel, because as much as there are some things that I think they dealt with really well in how they handled that, that's a classic mistake that sequel films often do. And we want to recreate it's Ghostbusters 2 having the walking Statue of Liberty to try and redo Stay Puft, and it's like you're doing that thing again, but just it's not ever going to be as iconic because you don't quite know what made it iconic in the first place. It was kind of luck.
It was just luck and just a new thing. But like, if you're trying to do the same new thing in the same setting with the same basic ingredients, it's not new anymore.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with that. But I do think, on the whole, as a piece, I actually probably found it just as entertaining as the first series, personally. But I still don't necessarily want a third one, which is really odd. So after the first series I really enjoyed, didn't really want a second series. Now I've really enjoyed the second series, I still don't want a third series. So at what point am I going to learn that they know what they're doing? But to me, it feels a bit like with Toy Story, where I was so against them doing a Toy Story 3, and then they made one of my favourite films ever. And then I go, oh, okay, they did know what they were doing, fair enough. And then they announced Toy Story 4. And now my head's in my hands again, going, no, you've just done the perfect trilogy, and now you're going to do it again.
Yeah.
But then a part of me has to go, well, let's just trust them, because actually they 3 were so good, and everything else they've done is so good. And I really enjoyed the past 2 seasons of Stranger Things. I don't think they're the best telly ever. They're not the best Netflix series I've watched, but they are just 9 hours of, mostly, with a huge exception on series 2, because we'll get on to episode 7
we
briefly.
will definitely talk about episode 7. Agents of Shite.
Yeah, with the exception of that, I think it was a real fun 8 hours of kind of fun entertainment.
It's a nice thing to have as like a Halloween-y event almost every year, because Halloween isn't really a thing in this country, or like it's trying to be, but for me it's not. But it's quite nice to have a cultural, like,
for you, is because you don't like horror films as well.
And that's what I was
going
to say.
It's a horror for people that don't
it's a
like
horror
horrors.
for people that can't stomach like horrors, because even the jump scares are quite mild, and I can deal with that. But I've got a feeling that the Duffer Brothers will be now sitting down with the Netflix guys, and they'll be going, "We've got to do it again. Do Stranger Things 3 with those kids, until those kids suddenly have like a sort of Paramount Pictures contract, and that's them gone." You know, like, keep doing it because people like it, and I totally get it. It's an enjoyable like thing that you can sit through, and like I say, it's better than most TV. But I would have just so much rather that it was a one-off thing, because the joy of it was like totally unexpected nature of, oh, those kids are really good, and it's like a nice thing, and the Dungeons and Dragons thing, that's like a cool like metaphor, and like a.
I don't think, for me, I don't think I loved the first series enough to warrant that. To me, I'm just grateful to have another 9 hours of enjoyable stuff to watch.
Yeah, and
I don't really mind that. It's not like they've kind of shat all over something that I thought was amazing.
I'm not sitting there going, oh, it's awful. Episode 7 was quite bad, but like, no, I'm not sitting there going awful, but like, it wasn't. I was lukewarm on it. I say.
Okay, that's fair.
So let's talk about episode 7 of this season.
Episode 7. Yeah, episode 7 will be quite spoilery, I guess, because we're going to talk about it. But to be honest, it spoils itself by existing. Like,
what a review.
Yeah, you could probably skip episode 7 and it would just be fine. All you would know is that 11 had a new costume.
So episode 7 is the textbook example of a filler episode, where it's almost like they've got a third-party writer to go, write me an episode where at the end of this episode nothing has happened to the plot, because it's it focuses on 11/Jane as she goes to the big city to meet up with someone else who was in the sort of scientific experiment with her. Another X-Man who has the powers, and it just goes total X-Men, and it's like the saturation and the colour grading just get like dialed up to like 11 for some reason. No pun intended.
I didn't even make that connection.
And it just goes very campy and like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.y for like an hour, and then nothing happens other than that. Yeah.
It reminded me of, actually sometimes they can be very good, but Doctor Who has a thing that they call Doctor Light episodes, which is basically episodes of Doctor Who that don't really have the Doctor in it. And they basically have them in Doctor Who because of filming schedule reasons. Sometimes it forces them into really interesting creative corners, and you end up with episodes like Blink. Sometimes it creates real dross, and I think that's what happened here. But I'm more cynical even than that. I don't think it's a filler episode. I think this was a test bed or a setup for a potential series 3 or spin-off.
I really hope not.
No, I think
what you mean with the sort of comedy punk like cartoon characters that this woman has.
Well, I just think just having a different idea, to make it an anthology or to somehow bend was we're going to follow one of the other characters.
Yeah, and actually I was thinking if they were to do an anthology and if this was that, then I'm kind of glad it's not, because actually it felt like it was a second unit team that went off and made it. It felt like the Duffers had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. But I think the good thing about it is that the reaction to it has been pretty much universally negative, which is a really nice way, I guess, in this modern world that Netflix can see that and just go, if that was going to be a series 3, no.
Well, that's the thing, because I was in a Facebook thread like today about it, where someone who I consider to be quite a casual viewer was like, "What's up with episode 7? That was weird." Yeah. And as we're going, I know, what was that? It was nonsense. And someone posted a picture of the IMDb ratings for each episode, and it goes 9, 8.9, 9.2. Episode 7 is 6.4.
It's one of the worst episodes of a TV show that I like ever. And I don't mean that it's the worst episode of a TV show, but of a TV show that's consistently quite enjoyable and then just has this one big stinker. It's up there with the post 9/11 West Wing episode of just what was that? Let's just erase that hour and pretend that didn't happen.
And what's weirdest about it is that season 1 of Stranger Things had 8 episodes and season 2 has 9 episodes.
Yeah, and actually I don't know whether my brain is painting this memory in, but I think I remember the Duffer Brothers saying something like, we're doing 1 episode extra and there's a reason for it, and a kind of a, nod and a wink, watch this space. And that's what also makes me think that they're very consciously seeing this as a test bed for something else. Because Netflix might have allowed them to do that extra hour, or even made them do that extra hour, of a way of saying, do what you want, but we want to get more series out of this.
But it's worrying because when I say I'd like this to be an anthology show, I mean I don't really care about this building and the science experiments there. I mean, the title is Stranger Things. Go to a totally different town. Something weird is happening there. It doesn't even need to be kids. It could be anything.
I think it vaguely would need kids, 80s. Strange Things.
Yeah, sure.
I think they're the 3 things.
But Strange Things is such a huge remit. You could go sort of signs and crop circles, anything. It doesn't need to be this building and all the kids in here. Just follow them around. I think they have taken it in very much the wrong direction. No, but I now you said it, I think you're probably right. That totally is we might do the 3rd one about this little ragtag group of punks from the cartoon from the Beano. Yeah.
And that's what made me realise that they kind of did know what they were doing with Series 2, because I think what they realised is people, for better or worse, and I think is a bit of a mix of the both, they realised that people like those specific characters. It isn't just kids on bikes, people did like them. It's going to be very tricky from here on out, unless they do something a bit different. They've found themselves in a position like the Halloween films, where they created the first one about Michael Myers. Then they did quite a poor, I think, sequel, also with Michael Myers, that was rushed out. And then the 3rd one is just a totally different story that happens to be set on Halloween, which was the original intention, was the idea that there'd basically be films called Halloween that came out at Halloween that were just a different horror story every year. But the success of the first film panicked the studio into wanting to just repeat that formula. And then when they released Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, everyone hated it because they were thinking, where's Michael Myers gone? And they're in the exact same position now with Stranger Things, where you can't do 2 that directly follow on and then do something too different.
Oh, they're now totally damned if they do, damned if they don't, because if they do Stranger Things 3, it's the 3rd film, if you want to count it like a film rather than seasons of a TV show. People are going to hate it if those kids don't turn up. People are going to hate it if it's those New York punks in their kind
that
of
won't happen.
crap Blade Runner like world, and people are going to hate it not hate it, but if it's those kids again, and there's a bigger bad.
Yeah, oh, he's got new things on the wall.
Yeah, then it's going to get tiresome.
I think it's a shame though that our culture is at a point where things can either be a one-off or a trilogy. Because the third option for me would just be Duffer Brothers just go and do something else now.
Yeah.
You did this great two things, but like.
But you and I know how business works. So
I know, as we've learned from Harry Potter films, they're going to start aging very rapidly now. They don't look hugely different in the last two series.
They got away with it for this one, didn't they?
They're going to get to a point where it's probably either the next year or the year after, because this will run and run, where they're suddenly going to look like blokes. And that is the point where
Kevin Spacey approaches them.